I want to talk about diagrams because I think they're really, really interesting and essential to our enterprise. And they're like maps, and they're like sketches, both words that we've been tossing around quite a lot lately, but they're unique. I think most of us can call that a sketch. It has characteristics of having been made quickly. It has characteristics of representing some real-world attributes like texture sometimes, or color or outline, etc. Many of you will recognize that as a map. It also has some relationship to some real-world stuff, either shape or scale, but not both, and other kinds of abstractions, to be sure, but kind of one-to-one mappings. That's one reason we call it a map to the world. And then there are these critters called diagrams, which are graphic things, and they talk about or represent or abstract real-world and spatial things, but in a different way, and in critically different ways. Diagrams graphically represent high levels of abstraction, just as maps do, and perhaps in a different way that sketches and photographs do. They emphasize critically elements and relations, a good basic database concept, such as topology, for example, connectedness, existence, duality, singularity, and other kinds of high-level topological constructions, rather than, for example, measurement or detail that you would find often in a map or a sketch. And they're often used in the process of explanation or argument, whether with yourself or your client, your instructor, your students, your colleagues. There are many kinds of familiar diagrams in different disciplines. They all have the characteristics I talked about, having elements and relations in them. They use color. They often use arrows for various reasons. They are, even though some of them are more map-like than others, they're not maps in ways that we can distinguish them. And to be sure, this is a continuum, and there are sketch-like maps, and there are map-like diagrams, and there are things that are odd hybrids that we can't quite figure out until we see how they're being used, and that's an important part of the thing here. Here's a famous one, Garden Cities of the Future, Ebenezer Howard. This is a fragment of a larger diagram, and he says, note, this is only a diagram. We can't make the plan, we can't make the map, and I'll use those two terms interchangeably for now, until we have a site. So there's something different here. This is a set of concepts, ideas, elements, and relations that have yet to land on the ground. And when they do land on the ground, then they will generate maps and plans and work orders and construction equipment and all that kind of stuff. And here's a canonical, familiar bubble diagram from the architectural and land planning enterprise, where once again we see elements and relations and topological constraints like connectedness and maybe family relationships where color is used to designate. There's something the same about these, but we don't know what it is, perhaps even, or maybe we can dig in, it's so obvious what it is. And there's a very simple graphical palette that's constrained by all those semiotic rules that Bertin and others have helped us understand the uses of, that are used to map these concepts, not their terrain-based implementation. But what's so cool, I think, and interesting and fabulous and important about these is that, in fact, they have some kind of a relationship to maps. They can be derived from maps. We can look at a map or a plan and diagram it. Or we can take a diagram and instantiate it as a map or a plan. And so they hold this interesting, dare I say, epistemological relationship to what we know and how we know it and where it lands in the birth of maps and plans and the design process.